The scent of fresh-baked sourdough filled my tiny bakery as I watched my sister's flashy sports car pull up outside. Even through the window, I could see the contempt on her face as she surveyed my modest storefront. Sweet Dreams Bakery, barely 800 square feet of space in a less than trendy part of town. "Oh, Olivia," she sighed dramatically as she walked in, designer heels clicking against the worn tile floor. "Still playing with your little hobby, I see." I continued kneading the dough in front of me, not bothering to look up. "Hello, Sophia. What brings you to my little hobby today?" My sister was the CEO of Golden Plate Restaurants, our family's chain of upscale dining establishments. 30 locations across 3 states, each one a temple to overpriced mediocrity. But in our family's eyes, Sophia was the successful one. I was just the disappointment who'd walked away from the family business to bake cookies. "Mom and Dad wanted me to check on you," she said, wrinkling her nose at the flour dust in the air. "Make sure you're managing." I knew what she really meant. Our parents had been concerned ever since I used my inheritance, a measly tenth of what Sophia had received, to open this bakery instead of taking my expected place in the family business. "I'm managing just fine," I replied, shaping the dough with practiced movements. "But you didn't drive across town just to ask about my welfare." Sophia picked up one of my business cards, holding it like it might bite her. "Actually, I came to invite you to the opening of our newest restaurant, Golden Plate's 30th location. It would mean a lot to the family if you attended." I remembered the last family gathering I'd attended 6 months ago. The endless jabs about my quaint little shop, the pointed comments about how some people just aren't cut out for real business. Sophia had spent the entire evening describing her expansion plans while our parents beamed with pride. "I'll think about it," I said, knowing I wouldn't go. "Don't think too long," Sophia smirked. "Though I suppose you're not too busy here." She gestured to the empty shop. What she didn't know was that my little bakery was empty because every loaf of bread, every pastry, every cake had already been sold out for the day, just like every day for the past year. She didn't see the line that formed outside my door each morning, the loyal customers who spread the word about my artisanal creations, the food critics who had started taking notice. She also didn't know about the food science degree I'd earned while working in our family's restaurants, learning everything I could about the chemistry of baking, or the business classes I took at night, preparing for the empire I planned to build, one perfect loaf at a time. Most importantly, she didn't know about Sweet Dreams Enterprises, the corporation I'd quietly established, the one that had been buying up failing bakeries across the country, transforming them with my recipes and methods, building a network that would soon rival Golden Plate's reach. "You know," Sophia continued, examining her manicure, "there's always a place for you at Golden Plate, even if it's just managing one of our dessert stations." I thought about the contract sitting in my office, waiting to be signed. The one that would make Sweet Dreams Enterprises the largest artisanal bakery chain in the country. The one that would put my little hobby in direct competition with Golden Plate's mediocre dessert menu. "Thanks," I said, sliding the shaped dough into a proofing basket. "But I'm happy where I am." Sophia shrugged, already turning to leave. "Suit yourself. But don't come crying to us when this place inevitably fails. Not everyone is cut out for success like I am." As her car roared away, I allowed myself a small smile. My sister had always been so focused on appearances, the expensive cars, the designer clothes, the flashy restaurants, that she never bothered to look deeper. She didn't understand that true success wasn't about showing off. It was about building something real. I learned that lesson early, working in our family's restaurants. Golden Plate had started as my grandfather's dream, quality food served with pride. But under my father's leadership, and now Sophia's, it had become a monument to shortcuts and cost-cutting. Frozen desserts passed off as homemade, pre-packaged sauces doctored to taste authentic, everything designed to maximize profit at the expense of quality. That's why I'd walked away. That's why I'd started small, perfecting my recipes, building a reputation for excellence. While Sophia was busy expanding Golden Plate's empire of mediocrity, I was creating something authentic. The bell above my door chimed as my first afternoon customer walked in. "Ms. Bennett." Mrs. Rodriguez, one of my regulars, called out. "Please tell me you saved me some of your sourdough." I smiled, reaching for the loaf I'd set aside specially for her. "Of course, Mrs. Rodriguez. And how did your grandson like the birthday cake?" "Oh, he loved it. Everyone at the party wanted to know where I got it. I gave out all your business cards. This was how I built my business, one customer at a time, one perfect product at a time. Word of mouth spread faster than any advertising campaign, and reputation meant everything in the food industry. After Mrs. Rodriguez left, I retreated to my small office in the back. The space was tiny but efficiently organized, with one wall covered in maps marking the locations of my growing network of bakeries. Each one had been carefully chosen, purchased through shell companies to keep my expansion quiet. I picked up the contract again, running my fingers over the embossed Sweet Dreams Enterprises logo. With this acquisition, a beloved but struggling chain of artisanal bakeries on the West Coast, my network would expand to 50 locations. More importantly, it would give me the distribution infrastructure I needed for the next phase of my plan. My phone buzzed with a text from my lawyer, all set for tomorrow's signing, paperwork ready for the merger announcement. Another message followed quickly. Also, interesting news about Golden Plate. Might want to check the business section. I pulled up the financial news on my laptop, and there it was: Golden Plate restaurants facing financial troubles. Stock prices drop amid quality concerns. The article detailed what I'd long suspected. Sofia's aggressive expansion had stretched the company thin. Food quality had suffered, customer complaints were rising, and several locations were underperforming. More importantly, their dessert sales, once a reliable profit center, had plummeted as customers discovered better options. Options like Sweet Dreams Bakeries, though the article didn't make that connection. Not yet. I leaned back in my chair, thinking about Sofia's invitation to the new restaurant opening. Maybe I would attend after all. It would be interesting to see my sister's face when she realized that her successful chain was failing while my little hobby was about to become the biggest name in artisanal baking. The next morning, I arrived at my bakery well before dawn, as usual. The smell of fresh coffee mingled with the yeasty aroma of proofing dough as I prepared for another day. My small team of bakers, each one carefully trained in my methods, worked quietly at their stations. As I checked the day's orders, my phone buzzed again. This time it was an email from Golden Plate's corporate office, marked urgent, seeking partnership opportunities, confidential. I smiled, remembering all the times Sofia had mocked my tiny operation. She had no idea that her biggest competitor was her own sister, or that while she'd been focused on flash and expansion, I'd been building an empire based on quality and authenticity. The line outside my door was already forming, loyal customers waiting for their daily bread, new faces drawn by growing word of mouth. Tomorrow, when the merger was announced, they'd learn that their favorite local bakery was part of something much bigger. But for now, I had bread to bake and plans to finalize. Success, like good bread, takes time and patience. And I've been very, very patient. The opening of Golden Plate's 30th location was exactly what I expected. All flash, no substance. Crystal chandeliers hung from vaulted ceilings, waiters in bow ties carried trays of champagne, and local celebrities mingled with business elite. At the center of it all stood my sister Sofia, basking in what she thought was her moment of triumph. I arrived deliberately late, dressed not in the designer clothes our family favored, but in a crisp white chef's coat with the Sweet Dreams logo embroidered in gold. The guard at the door almost didn't let me in until Sofia spotted me. "Olivia," she called out, her smile not quite reaching her eyes. "You actually came, and in your work clothes." "Wouldn't miss it," I replied, accepting a glass of champagne. "Interesting choice of location. Isn't there a Sweet Dreams bakery just down the street?" Sofia's smile faltered slightly. "That little place, hardly competition for Golden Plate. Though their bread is surprisingly good, we might consider acquiring them for our dessert division." I hid my smile behind my glass. That little place was one of my most profitable locations, and it had been steadily stealing Golden Plate's dessert customers for months. Our parents approached, father's face already flushed from too much champagne. Olivia, finally ready to admit that real success requires thinking bigger than a small bakery. "Actually," I said carefully, checking my watch, "I came to make an announcement. In about 2 minutes, if you'll excuse me." Before they could respond, I made my way to the small stage where a band had been setting up. The merger announcement was scheduled to go live any moment now. "Ladies and gentlemen," I began, my voice carrying across the suddenly quiet room. "First, congratulations to Golden Plate on their 30th location. It's quite an achievement, I paused, meeting Sophia's suspicious gaze. But I'm here to announce an even bigger achievement. As of 5 minutes ago, Sweet Dreams Enterprises has completed its merger with West Coast Artisan Bakers, making us the largest artisanal food company in the country. The room erupted in murmurs. Sophia's champagne glass froze halfway to her lips. Sweet Dreams Enterprises, my father demanded. What are you talking about? I pulled out my phone and projected the news headline onto the restaurant's white wall. Sweet Dreams Enterprises emerges as food industry giant. Merger creates network of over 50 locations. That small bakery you've been mocking. I continued, enjoying the shock on their faces. It's just one location in an enterprise that now spans 15 states. An enterprise that, I might add, has been steadily outperforming Golden Plate in every market we share. Sophia lunged forward, grabbing my arm. This is impossible. You run a tiny bakery. You bake bread. I built an empire. I corrected her, gently removing her hand. While you were focused on appearances, I was focused on quality. While you were cutting corners to maximize profits, I was building a brand based on authenticity. The room had gone completely silent. Everyone was staring at their phones, reading the breaking news about Sweet Dreams Enterprises and its mysterious CEO. Me. But the money, my father stuttered. Your inheritance wasn't enough to build something like this. No, it wasn't, I agreed. But my first location was so successful that investors came to me. Real investors, not family money. People who believed in my vision of quality over quantity. Another headline flashed across the wall. Golden Plate stock plummets amid quality concerns. Sweet Dreams Enterprises seen as major competitor. Sophie's face had gone pale. Those partnership inquiries, they came from your company? Actually, I smiled, they came from your board of directors. They've been watching Sweet Dreams' success. And they're worried about Golden Plate's future. Speaking of which, I nodded to a group of people who had just entered the restaurant, Golden Plate's board members, led by their chairman. Ms. Bennett, the chairman called out, ignoring Sophia completely. Do you have a moment to discuss that partnership proposal? My sister's composure finally cracked. You can't do this. We're family. Funny, I replied. That didn't seem to matter when you were mocking my little hobby, when you were telling everyone I'd never succeed. Olivia, my father stepped forward, his tone suddenly conciliatory. Surely we can work something out. Keep this in the family. I looked around the room at my family, at Sophia's crumbling arrogance, at my father's desperate calculation, at my mother's shocked silence. For years, they had dismissed my dreams, belittled my choices, assumed their way was the only path to success. I have worked something out, I said firmly. I've built a company that values quality over appearances, substance over flash. A company that treats its employees with respect and its customers with honesty. That's not going to change. The chairman cleared his throat. Perhaps we should discuss this privately. I nodded, then turned back to my family. You're welcome to apply for positions with Sweet Dreams Enterprises. We're always looking for talented people who are willing to learn our way of doing things. Starting from the bottom, of course. The bottom? Sophia's voice rose to a shriek. I'm a CEO. We're a CEO, the chairman corrected her. The board has called an emergency meeting for tomorrow morning. Given recent developments, he didn't need to finish. Everyone in the room knew what tomorrow's meeting would bring. As I followed the board members to a private room, I heard my mother's shocked whisper. All this time, while we thought she was just baking bread. The next few weeks were a blur of meetings, press conferences, and reorganization plans. Golden Plate's board, seeing the writing on the wall, agreed to a merger with Sweet Dreams Enterprises. Their restaurants would be renovated, their menus revamped, their entire approach transformed to match my vision of quality and authenticity. Sophia, unsurprisingly, didn't take it well. After being voted out as CEO, she stormed into my original bakery, still in her designer suit, still radiating entitled anger. Happy now? She demanded. You've destroyed everything our family built. I continued mixing dough, the rhythmic motion as soothing as ever. No, I've saved it. Grandfather started Golden Plate because he believed in serving quality food. Somewhere along the way, that vision got lost in the pursuit of profit and expansion. We were successful. You were failing, I corrected her. Your customers were leaving, your reputation was suffering, And your profits were dropping. The only difference is that now everyone knows it." She slumped against the counter, her designer suit collecting flour dust. "So what am I supposed to do now?" I studied my sister, seeing past the makeup and expensive clothes to the uncertainty beneath. "Learn. Grow. Start from the beginning, like I did." "You want me to become a baker," she scoffed. "I want you to understand why we're successful. Here." I handed her an apron. "First lesson. Real success starts with getting your hands dirty." To my surprise, she took the apron. Maybe it was desperation, maybe it was curiosity, but something had finally cracked through her arrogance. Over the following months, Sweet Dreams Enterprises continued to grow, but we never lost sight of our core values. Each location maintained the quality and authenticity that had built our reputation. Our employees were trained not just in baking techniques, but in the philosophy that had made us successful. Sophia, to everyone's shock, threw herself into learning the business from the ground up. She started as a baker's assistant, working early mornings, learning every aspect of what made our products special. Slowly, the designer suits disappeared, replaced by flour-dusted aprons and comfortable shoes. One morning, I found her experimenting with a new bread recipe, her face focused in concentration. "I never understood before," she said, not looking up from her work. "Why customers lined up every morning, why they chose a small bakery over our fancy restaurants. But it's not about size or appearance. It's about caring enough to do things right." I smiled, remembering my own journey to this understanding. "Ready for your next lesson?" She looked up, flowers streaked across her cheek. "There's more?" "There's always more to learn. That's the real secret to success." My parents took longer to come around, but eventually, they too had to acknowledge that their disappointing daughter had built something remarkable. The day they first tasted bread they had helped bake, after finally agreeing to take some basic classes at our training center, I saw real pride in their eyes. Not the superficial pride they'd once shown in Sakia's expansions, but pride in creating something genuine. Today, Sweet Dreams Enterprises is known not just for our food, but for our commitment to quality and authenticity. Our training program has become legendary in the industry, producing not just skilled bakers, but passionate artisans who understand that success isn't measured in square footage or stock prices, but in the satisfaction of doing things right. And that tiny bakery where it all started. I still work there sometimes, usually in the quiet hours before dawn. It reminds me that every empire, no matter how large it grows, begins with a single perfect loaf of bread. The old Santa's jewelry sign still hung above the shop door, its gold lettering faded after 30 years of sun and rain. From my office window across the street, I could see my sister Diana arranging displays, just as our father had taught her, just as he had refused to teach me. "Jewelry is an art, Sophia," he'd said countless times. "It requires a delicate touch, an eye for beauty. Your sister understands this. You're too focused on numbers." Numbers. The very thing that had helped me build Santa's International, the luxury retail empire that was about to swallow their precious family store whole. Not that they knew that yet. Not that they knew the mysterious CEO of their biggest competitor was the daughter they deemed unqualified to run a single jewelry shop. Life has a way of coming full circle. 10 years earlier? Absolutely not. My father's voice echoed through the back office of Santa's Jewelry, making the antique mirrors on the walls tremor slightly. "The business goes to Diana." End of discussion. I stood my ground, the business proposal I'd spent months preparing clutched in my hands. At 24, I had just completed my MBA, graduating top of my class from Wharton. Diana, at 27, had spent the past 5 years working in the shop, learning the art of jewelry from our father. "Dad, just look at the numbers," I pleaded. "The market is changing. Online retail is growing exponentially. If we don't adapt..." "Numbers." He spat the word like it was poison. "This business was built on personal relationships, on craftsmanship, on tradition. Your grandfather didn't build this store by staring at spreadsheets. No, I thought. He built it by being smart enough to buy property in what would become the most expensive shopping district in the city. By understanding that luxury was about more than just the product. The proposal includes maintaining the personal touch." I tried again. "But we can expand, create an online presence, develop a global brand." "Enough." He slammed his hand on the vintage mahogany desk. the same desk where my grandfather had first taught him about diamonds. Diana understands this business. She has the artist's eye, the personal touch. You turn this into some soulless corporation. Diana sat in the corner, pretending to examine a sapphire under her loupe. But I caught her smirk. She had known this was coming, had probably encouraged it. Dad, please, one last try. The numbers don't lie. Foot traffic is down 30% from last year. Online competitors are eating into our market share. We need to evolve. He walked to the wall, where photographs chronicled 3 generations of Santos jewelers. My grandfather opening the store in 1960, my father taking over in 1990, and soon, Diana would be the next in line. This store is our legacy, he said, his voice softer but no less firm. It's about heritage, about maintaining the standards your grandfather set. Diana understands that. You destroy everything we've built. I looked at my sister, still pretending to study the sapphire. She had never gone to college, never studied business or economics. But she could spend hours talking about cut and clarity, could charm customers with stories about each piece's unique energy. So that's it? I asked quietly. All my education, all my ideas, they mean nothing because I see jewelry as a business instead of an art. You're young, he said dismissively. You'll learn there's more to life than numbers and profits. Maybe if you spent more time actually working with the jewelry instead of hiding behind your computer. I tried. The words burst out before I could stop them. I've been trying since I was 16, but every time I asked to learn, you sent me to do inventory or update the books. Diana got to learn about diamonds. I got to count them. Because that's where your talents lie. He threw up his hands in exasperation. You're good with numbers, with organization. That's valuable, but it's not what this business needs in a leader. Diana finally looked up from her sapphire. He's right, Sophia. You've never had the passion for the jewelry itself. You see them as commodities, not treasures. The way she said it, so reasonable, so sympathetic, made it worse somehow. Like I was a child who couldn't understand basic truths. Fine. I placed my proposal on his desk, watching as my carefully prepared charts and projections scattered across the antique wood. But remember this moment. Remember what you're choosing and what you're throwing away. Don't be dramatic, Diana sighed. You can still work here, handle the books, manage inventory. Those are important too. I almost laughed. She was offering me a glorified clerk position, like it was some great favor. No thank you. I straightened my shoulders, looking my father in the eye. I resign. Sophia. Effective immediately. I turned to the door, then paused. One last thing. Those numbers you don't want to look at. They show that without major changes, you'll lose 50% of your market share within 5 years. But I'm sure Diana's artist's eye will fix that. I walked out of Santos Jewelry for what I thought was the last time. Behind me, I heard Diana's voice. She'll calm down. She always does. But I didn't calm down. Instead, I got to work. My first stop was Grace Chen's office. Grace had been my mentor during business school and now ran one of the most successful venture capital firms in the city. I was wondering when you'd show up, she said as I walked in. Let me guess. They chose tradition over innovation. I nodded, sinking into one of her modern leather chairs, so different from the antiques that filled Santos Jewelry. They gave it to Diana. Said I'm not qualified because I care more about numbers than the art of jewelry. Grace smiled, but it wasn't a sympathetic smile. It was the smile of a predator who smelled opportunity. Good. Good? I stared at her. How is this good? Because now you're free. She leaned forward, her eyes intense. Tell me, Sophia, if you were building a jewelry business from scratch today, would you do it like your father's store? God, no. The answer came instantly. I'd start digital first, but with strategic physical locations in key markets. Build a brand that combines traditional luxury with modern convenience. Create an experience that... Stop. She held up her hand. You just outlined the business plan I've been waiting for someone to pitch. The luxury jewelry market is ripe for disruption, but all the startups I see are either too traditional or too digital. Nobody's cracked the hybrid model. My heart started beating faster. What are you saying? I'm saying, she smiled again, that I have $20 million looking for the right investment. Show me a detailed plan and it's yours. I spent the next 3 months living on coffee and determination. My apartment became a war room, walls covered with market research, competitor analyses, and supply chain diagrams. I reached out to contacts I'd made during my MBA, connecting with diamond dealers, manufacturers, and retail experts. The plan came together piece by piece, not just an online jewelry store, but a complete luxury experience platform. Customers could browse online, but then schedule private showings in intimate boutique spaces. Each piece would come with a digital story, not just about its specifications, but about its journey from mind to market. I called it Luna Luxe after my grandmother Lucia, who had taught me my first lessons about business while my sister was learning about jewelry. When I presented the final plan to Grace, she didn't say anything for a long time. Just read through every page, making small notes in the margins. Finally, she looked up. 30 million. For 30%. I blinked. You said 20. That was before I saw this. She tapped the business plan. This isn't just a jewelry company. This is the future of luxury retail. Within 6 months, Luna Luxe launched its first boutique, directly across the street from Santos Jewelry. My father and sister never realized who was behind it. The CEO of Luna Luxe was listed as Sophia Luna, using my middle name. Just another competitor in an increasingly crowded market. But we weren't just another competitor. Everything I had learned about jewelry, about luxury, about what customers really wanted, it all went into Luna Luxe. While Santos Jewelry clung to their traditional model, we innovated. Our online platform was seamless, beautiful, and user-friendly. Our boutiques were intimate and elegant, staffed by experts who understood both jewelry and technology. We didn't just sell pieces, we created experiences. And we grew. Fast. Within 2 years, Luna Luxe had boutiques in 5 major cities. Our online sales exceeded all projections. The press called us the Apple of jewelry retail, a perfect blend of tradition and innovation. I watched from my office as Santos Jewelry struggled to adapt. They finally launched a website, but it was clunky and outdated. They tried social media, but Diana's posts about jewelry energy and crystal vibrations only emphasized how out of touch they were. The numbers I had predicted were proving true. Their market share was declining exactly as I had forecast. The only difference was that instead of losing customers to various competitors, they were losing them primarily to Luna Luxe. Grace called me one morning, 5 years after we'd launched. Have you seen the latest figures? Just finished reviewing them, I replied, looking at the reports on my screen. Luna Luxe now controlled 40% of the luxury jewelry market in our region. Santos Jewelry's share had dropped to 5%. They're going to have to sell, she said. The question is, are you ready to tell them who's buying? I looked out my window at the old shop, at the faded sign that had once represented everything I couldn't have. Not yet, I said. Let them struggle a little longer. Let them realize exactly what they gave up when they decided I wasn't qualified. You're cold. Grace laughed. I love it. But it wasn't about being cold. It wasn't even about revenge, not really. It was about proving something, to them, to myself, to everyone who thought tradition mattered more than innovation. And I was about to prove it in the most dramatic way possible. The letter arrived at Santos Jewelry on a Tuesday morning. I watched through my office window as the courier handed it to Diana. Saw her expression change as she read the elegant letterhead, Luna Luxe Holdings. My phone buzzed, our head of security alerting me that my father had just entered the building. Right on schedule. Diana must have called him immediately. I took my time preparing for the meeting, carefully selecting my outfit, a custom-made suit that cost more than Santos Jewelry's monthly revenue. The necklace I wore was one of our latest designs, a piece that perfectly embodied Luna Luxe's blend of tradition and innovation. They're here, my assistant's voice came through the intercom. Mr. Santos looks agitated. Give them 5 minutes in the waiting room, I replied. Let them feel what it's like to wait for someone else's decision. I stood at my window, watching their shop across the street. The displays Diana had arranged this morning looked tired, outdated, like a museum piece rather than a living business. A full acquisition proposal, I finished for him. Luna Luxe will purchase Santos Jewelry at a premium over its current market value. The Santos name will become a heritage line within our brand, preserving grandfather's legacy while bringing it into the modern era. And what happens to us? Diana asked quietly. That depends. I walked to my window, looking down at their store. Dad, you can take a comfortable retirement. Diana, you can stay on as a creative consultant for the heritage line, if you're willing to learn new ways of doing things. And if we refuse, my father's old stubbornness crept into his voice. I turned back to face them. Then you'll be bankrupt within 6 months. The bank is already considering calling your loans. When that happens, you'll lose everything, the store, the inventory, even the building grandfather bought so wisely. Diana started to cry. My father put his hand over hers. You're just like your mother, he said softly. She always saw things so clearly, so practically. I should have remembered that. Mom had died when I was 12, but she had taught me my first lessons about business, about seeing beyond the surface to what really mattered. She also taught me about value, I replied, about knowing what things are truly worth. This offer, it's worth more than your pride. I pressed another button, and new images appeared on the screen, renderings of what Santos jewelry could become as part of Luna Luxe. We'll restore the building, modernize the interior while preserving its historic character. The Santos collection will have its own dedicated space, telling the story of 3 generations of craftsmanship. But it will also have all the technological innovations that make Luna Luxe successful. My father stood, walking to the screen. I saw him studying the images, seeing how we could preserve his father's legacy while building something new. The papers need to be signed by Friday, I said quietly. After that, the bank will make its own decisions. Why? Diana's voice was barely a whisper. Why offer us anything? You've already won. I walked to my office wall, where a single piece of jewelry sat in a display case, my first attempt at design, made when I was 16. Dad had called it crude, unartistic, but it had taught me something important about creation and value, because despite everything, we're family, and family businesses aren't just about profit. They're about legacy, about building something that lasts. My father turned from the screen, his eyes wet. We were wrong, he said simply. About you, about everything. Yes, I agreed. You were. The question is, are you ready to admit that publicly? Because when this deal is announced, everyone will know that the daughter you rejected as unqualified built the company that saved your business. Diana stood, squaring her shoulders. I can live with that humiliation. It's better than watching Dad's legacy disappear completely. I nodded, pressing the intercom. Send in the lawyers. The next hour passed in a blur of signatures and legal terms. By the end, Santos Jewelry was officially part of Luna Luxe Holdings. My father looked both relieved and devastated. As they prepared to leave, I handed them each a small box, a gift to mark the occasion. Inside each box was a piece from Luna Luxe's first collection, the line I had personally designed, combining traditional craftsmanship with modern aesthetics. These are. Diana held up her necklace, studying it with her jeweler's eye. These are extraordinary. The design, the execution. This is what you meant about blending old and new. The pieces you dismissed as soulless, I reminded her, because they started with market research instead of artistic inspiration. My father put his box down unopened. I was a fool, he said quietly, a prideful old fool who couldn't see that the future was standing right in front of him. The past cannot be changed, I replied, quoting our grandfather's favorite saying. But the future is always under construction. After they left, I stood at my window for a long time, watching the sun set behind the Santos Jewelry sign. Tomorrow, workers would begin removing it, preparing for the rebranding. The old store would become something new, something that honored its history while embracing its future. Grace called just as I was preparing to leave. I saw the papers came through. How did it feel? I thought about my father's face when he realized who I was, about Diana's shocked recognition, about the moment they understood that the daughter they rejected had become their salvation. It felt. I paused, searching for the right word. It felt like coming full circle. And the reveal? Was it as satisfying as you'd hoped? I looked at the old photos on my phone, the ones from that last day at Santos Jewelry when they told me I wasn't qualified. Better, I said. Because it wasn't just about proving them wrong. It was about proving myself right. The next morning, as workers began transforming Santos Jewelry into its new identity, I sat in my office preparing for the press conference. The headlines would be dramatic. Luna Luxe CEO revealed as rejected Santos Harris. Family business drama ends in corporate takeover. But those headlines missed the real story. This wasn't about revenge or humiliation. It was about innovation triumphing over tradition. about seeing the future when others could only see the past. And as I watched my father and sister arrive for their first day as Luna Lux employees, I realized something else. Sometimes the greatest success isn't in defeating your doubters, but in transforming them into believers. The empire I'd built next door hadn't just consumed their business, it had shown them a new way forward. And maybe, just maybe, that was the most valuable thing I created. Not bad for someone who was unqualified. Hi, I'm Jessica Chen, and this is the story of how my mother's cruelest words became the foundation of my success. They say the best revenge is living well. But sometimes living well means watching your tormentors realize exactly what they threw away. I can still hear her voice on that rainy November night, sharp as broken glass. "You're worthless, just like your father. Get out of my house." I was 18, fresh out of high school, clutching an acceptance letter to a local community college. My crime? Choosing to study computer science instead of following my mother's dream of me becoming a doctor. Linda Chen, my mother, had always been obsessed with status. After divorcing my father when I was 12, she'd rebuilt her image as a successful real estate agent in our affluent suburban community. Our house was a showcase of her success, all gleaming hardwood and crystal chandeliers. But beneath that perfect surface lay a woman who measured everything and everyone by their potential to elevate her social status. "Computer science?" she'd sneered, reading my college plans. "Do you want to fix printers for minimum wage your whole life? No daughter of mine will embarrass me like this." I tried explaining about artificial intelligence, software development, the growing tech industry, but Mom was already typing on her phone, barely listening. "I've already told everyone you're pre-med. The Wang's daughter is starting at Johns Hopkins this fall. How am I supposed to hold my head up at the country club now?" That's when I made my fatal mistake. Maybe if you spent less time at the country club and more time understanding what I want. The slap caught me off guard, sending my glasses flying. In the ringing silence that followed, Mom's perfectly manicured hand shook with rage. "You ungrateful little snake," she hissed. "I gave up everything to give you the best life. Your loser father hasn't paid child support in years. But I made sure you had designer clothes, piano lessons, everything. And this is how you repay me." She stormed upstairs, and for a moment I thought that was the end of it, just another of her dramatic outbursts. Then she returned with a garbage bag full of my clothes, throwing it at my feet. "Get out. Go live with your worthless father if you want to throw your life away. I won't watch you become a failure." "Mom, please." I said, "Gee, out." She grabbed my arm, nails digging in, and practically dragged me to the door. "Don't come crawling back when you're living in some filthy apartment fixing computers for minimum wage." The door slammed behind me, leaving me alone in the rain. I was 18, had $342 in my savings account, and nowhere to go. My father lived 3 states away, struggling to keep his small computer repair shop afloat. I hadn't seen him in person since the divorce. That night, sitting in a 24-hour diner with my garbage bag of belongings, I made 2 calls. The first was to my father. "Come stay with me, Jesse," he said immediately, his voice warm despite the static on the line. "It's not much, but we'll figure something out." The second call was to decline my community college acceptance. If I was going to prove my mother wrong, I needed to think bigger. The next few years were a blur of work and study. I moved in with Dad above his repair shop, taking online courses while helping him modernize his business. His shop, Chen's Computer Repair, became my crash course in both technology and business management. "Your mother always said I was dreaming too small," Dad told me one night as we worked late upgrading a client's servers. Maybe I was, but sometimes small dreams are the seeds of bigger ones. He was right. While helping local businesses with their needs, I noticed a common problem. Small companies needed enterprise-level cybersecurity, but couldn't afford the expensive solutions big corporations used. That observation became the seed of everything that followed. I spent my nights coding, developing a simplified but robust security suite specifically for small businesses. Dad let me test early versions on his clients, their feedback helping me refine the software. When I wasn't coding or helping in the shop, I was teaching myself about business planning, marketing, and startup funding. 3 years after being thrown out, I launched Secure Small, my cybersecurity startup. The timing was perfect. A wave of ransomware attacks had just targeted small businesses across the country, and our affordable solution quickly gained traction. Dad was my first investor, remortgaging his shop to give me seed money. "I believe in you, Jesse," he said, signing the papers. "Show them what a worthless person can do." The next few years were a rocket ride. Secure Small expanded from cybersecurity into other small business solutions. We opened offices in 3 cities. I hired the best developers I could find, many of them overlooked talents from non-traditional backgrounds. By my 28th birthday, Secure Small was valued at $80 million, and I was being featured in technology magazines as a rising star in the industry. I never Googled my mother during those years, though I knew she still lived in the same house, still sold real estate to the same wealthy clients. Sometimes I imagined her at her country club, lying about her successful doctor-daughter living abroad. I wondered if anyone ever questioned why there were no pictures, no visits, no proof of this fictional successful child. Then came the day everything changed. I was in my corner office, reviewing acquisition offers from larger tech companies, when my assistant buzzed me. "Ms. Chen, there's a Linda Chen here to see you. She claims she's your mother." I felt the old familiar tightness in my chest, but this time it was different. This time, I was different. "Send her in," I said. The woman who walked through my door looked smaller than I remembered. Her designer suit was a few seasons old, her smile strained, but her voice still carried that familiar mix of authority and disdain. "Jessica, darling, I've been trying to reach you." I leaned back in my chair, letting the silence stretch uncomfortably. "Finally," I said. "Really? The last words you spoke to me were that I was worthless. That was 10 years ago." She waved her hand dismissively. "Oh, sweetheart, you know I didn't mean that. I was just worried about your future. And look at you now, so successful. I always knew you had it in you." "Why are we here, Mom?" Her smile faltered slightly. "Well, as your mother, I thought it was time we reconnected. And actually, I'm between positions right now. The real estate market isn't what it used to be. I thought perhaps, given your company's success, you might have a place for me. Something in client relations maybe? You know how good I am with people." I looked at the woman who had thrown me out with nothing, who had called me worthless, who had chosen her social status over her own daughter. And I smiled. "Actually, Mom, we do have an opening. Why don't you come back tomorrow morning, 8 a.m. sharp? We'll see exactly what you're worth to this company." She beamed, completely missing the edge in my voice. "Oh, wonderful. I knew you wouldn't let your mother down. The Wams will be so impressed when I tell them." "No announcements yet," I cut in smoothly. "Let's see how tomorrow goes first." After she left, I made several calls. Tomorrow would indeed show everyone exactly what people were worth, and it would be a lesson my mother would never forget. The next morning, I arrived at the office at 7 a.m. Everything had to be perfect for what I had planned. My mother arrived at 7:58, wearing her most expensive suit, her smile bright with anticipation. "Jessica, darling, I brought coffee for my successful daughter." She held up a cup from an expensive cafe, the kind she used to say I'd never be able to afford. "Follow me, Mom," I said, leading her not to my office but to the main conference room. Her smile faltered slightly when she saw it was full of people, our entire management team, several board members, and in the center, my father. "John, what are you doing here?" She nearly dropped her coffee. Dad just smiled, the same gentle smile he'd worn when he remortgaged his shop to fund my dreams. "Please, take a seat, Mom." I gestured to the only empty chair, positioned directly under the main screen. "You wanted to see what position you might be worth in this company. Let's discuss that." I moved to the front of the room, clicking to the first slide. It showed a garbage bag full of clothes on a rainy doorstep. 10 years ago, Linda Chen threw her 18-year-old daughter out of the house for choosing to study computer science instead of medicine. She called that daughter worthless. I clicked to the next slide, security footage from that night at the diner. That daughter had $342 to her name. Mom's face had gone pale. "Jessica, this is hardly appropriate for a business meeting." "Oh, but it is," I continued smoothly, "because Secure Small's core values are built on recognizing worth in unexpected places. We hired talented developers who taught themselves coding in libraries because they couldn't afford college. We create solutions for small businesses that bigger companies deemed worthless. Everything we do is about seeing the value others miss." I clicked through more slides, Dad's shop, early versions of our software, our first tiny office. When we evaluate potential employees, we look at three things: their skills, their character, and their judgment of worth. So let's evaluate Linda Chen. I turned to face her directly. Skills first. You were a successful real estate agent, specializing in luxury properties. But according to public records, you haven't closed a sale in 8 months. Your license is currently suspended pending investigation of misrepresented property values. Mom's face flushed red. That was a simple misunderstanding. Character next, I continued as if she hadn't spoken. You abandoned your ex-husband when his business struggled, then prevented him from seeing his daughter. You threw that daughter out for not conforming to your image of success. And now that you're facing financial difficulties, you've come to the daughter you called worthless, expecting a job. The room was dead silent. Even the usual traffic sounds from outside seemed muted. Finally, judgment of worth. 10 years ago, you looked at a bright, ambitious 18-year-old and saw nothing of value because she didn't fit your narrow definition of success. You looked at a hardworking small business owner and saw a loser. Your judgment of worth has consistently been not just poor, but actively harmful. I clicked to the final slide, a comparison of two numbers. This is interesting, Mom. The first number is the current value of your suspended real estate license and frozen assets, approximately $42,000. The second is Secure Small's latest valuation, $80 million. Quite a gap between your judgment of worth and reality. Mom stood up, her hands shaking. I get it, Jessica. You've made your point. You're successful, and I was wrong. I'm sorry. Now can we discuss my position here like adults? I smiled. Oh, we are discussing your position. In fact, I do have a job for you. Her eyes lit up with hope. We're launching a new initiative to provide training and cybersecurity solutions to small computer repair shops. Dad's shop was our prototype location. We're expanding to 500 shops nationwide this year. I handed her a folder. Inside you'll find a job offer, entry-level technical support, 6-month probationary period. Starting salary matches our standard entry-level package. You'll work at Dad's shop, learning the basics of the industry you once dismissed. If you complete the training successfully, you'll have the opportunity to advance based solely on your merit, not your connections, not your status, not your relation to me. She stared at the folder like it might bite her. Technical support? At John's shop? But I'm your mother. No, Mom. 10 years ago, you made it very clear I wasn't your daughter anymore because I was worthless. You can't take that back just because my worth now comes with dollar signs attached. I turned to the room, meeting adjourned, everyone. Thank you for your time. As people filed out, Mom remained frozen in her chair, clutching the folder. The choice is yours, I said quietly. You can take the job, learn the industry from the ground up, and maybe eventually understand what real worth looks like. Or you can walk away. Either way, this is the only offer you'll ever get from me. Dad waited by the door as Mom slowly stood up, her perfect makeup streaked with tears. I need time to think, she whispered. Take 24 hours, I replied, just like you gave me 10 years ago. After she left, Dad wrapped me in a hug. You okay, Jessie? I nodded against his shoulder. You know what's funny, Dad? Part of me hoped she'd take one look at that entry-level offer and storm out in outrage. It would prove she hadn't changed at all. And now I almost hope she takes it, not for her sake, but because maybe, just maybe, she'll learn what we learned. That worth isn't about status or appearances. It's about what you build, what you contribute, how you treat people. The next morning, I arrived at work to find Mom waiting in reception, wearing a simple blouse instead of her designer suit. I'll take the job, she said quietly. I nodded. Report to Dad's shop tomorrow at 8 a.m. Don't be late. As I watched her leave, I thought about worth. How we measure it, how we create it, how we recognize it in others. My mother had thrown away a daughter in search of status. She'd lost everything chasing an image of success. Now she had a chance to learn what real success looked like, from the ground up. Would she learn? Only time would tell. But I had already learned the most valuable lesson. Sometimes being called worthless is just the beginning of proving your true worth. Today, Secure Small continues to grow. We've helped thousands of small businesses protect themselves in the digital age. Mom, she's still working at Dad's shop, slowly learning the industry she once dismissed. Sometimes, when I visit the shop, I catch her watching me with a mixture of pride and regret. Last week, she successfully completed her first solo computer repair. Dad sent me a photo of her proud smile, so different from her old country club smirk. Maybe she's finally learning that real worth isn't in what you appear to be, but in what you actually do. As for me, I keep that old garbage bag in my office closet. Not as a reminder of pain, but as a reminder that being called worthless doesn't make it true. Sometimes it just means others fail to see your worth. And proving them wrong, that's the sweetest success of all.